We only have 2 episodes left of The Stand, and I hate to say this, but I'm glad. This is one of those rare exceptions where I'm ready for this to be over. Um, I'm just not liking it. There's so many things that irritate me about this show, and we're going to talk about that. This is Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer, and yeah, let's just, because it's the briefest scene. Let's just talk about Trash Can Man briefly. We talked about him in the last episode. He's only in this one for a few minutes, but yet again, the performance is pretty much what it was last week, and not only that, there is no attempt at giving his backstory or letting us know who he is. I know where his story is going to end, and at this point, it almost feels it's a complete waste. It's a terrible performance, and that's about all I have to say. Larry, I know you had some thoughts.
I hate this character so much. I'm glad that we focused on him very little, at least if we're going to do this version of Trash Can Man. You know, I just would rather not focus on him. Ezra Miller needs to fire his agent for real, because, you know, this is just like, this is bad. This is really bad. You know, I will say I'm glad that, you know, we're past the point where we're flashing back and jumping around and everything, you know, and I feel this episode was better for it, you know. I do feel that much. But like you said, it's at the point where this episode, like, we do quite a few reviews, so, you know, like, oftentimes we'll have episodes of shows that are out at the same time, you know, that are released at the same time. I waited to the very last minute to watch this one before, like, literally before we started recording, I watched it. Like, because I'm like you said, I'm looking forward to it ending. And you said we have how many episodes? 2 episodes left.
There's 2 left. The next episode is titled The Stand, and then there's episode, I believe it's called Franny something. So I'm assuming that's the added content that they were talking about.
That's fucking worthless. The fact that, you know, we've built all these characters. Well, actually, that's the problem. They haven't built any of these characters. And now we're going to go back to Franny, who I haven't built a relationship up with through these other episodes, and I don't care. Like, I really don't. And that was my issue with Trash Can Man. I think that given a little bit of screen time, even this version, which is not my favorite by any means, it could have explained any of it. And I would have been like, okay, like, I get it. It works. But they've spent 0 time explaining him, 0 time going into his backstory, 0 time giving him any character development other than
Screech and...
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be titled Coda, Franny, and the Well. That's the final episode.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, no, looking forward to that.
Oh, go ahead, Larry.
But yeah, I feel like, you know, like, I guess I'll be the one giving the more optimistic opinions this episode, honestly, which is weird, but, you know, because it's just like, it could have been so great, and there are hints that are good, this show could be good, and like I said, this episode was more enjoyable, I think, to watch than previous episodes, because it didn't feel as rushed, even though I feel like for the journey that they had, we needed at least 2, and that's really what the show feels like it needed, you know, to go in a sort of to have a more not linear, but to not jump around in the timeline so much, just to let things play out as they are, and to maybe have more episodes and explore these characters more, because there are a lot of interesting personalities at play and a lot of really good performances, I think.
Harold, to me, hands down, was the best performance of the series, in my opinion. I think he had a great storyline. It ends in this one accurately to how it ends in the old series, and I'm assuming in the book. But I didn't like the fact that it ended that way in this, and the reason for that is throughout the whole show, Harold has sort of been the main character, in my opinion. Yes, he's the bad guy, but all the focus is on Harold, and This version of Harold is so twisted and good at it that his little ending where he writes his little, story about repenting, basically, to me, that doesn't hold up. That character didn't earn a repentance. A. B. There's a line of in the original. Stu is the lead guy. He's the main character. You're mostly focusing on Stu. There's a line of dialogue when Mother Abigail is dying, where she's like, Stu, you're the one." And it's so funny to me because it felt like the show was like, yeah, by the way, yeah, Stu is the main character. Actually, it's not Harold, but it's like, yeah, there's like an episode left, so who cares at this point? So I don't know. I thought that line made me laugh literally because I'm like, oh, the show has to tell me that Stu's the lead. Uh,
Well, as much as I complain and harp on about how bad this show was, well, not this show in particular, but The Walking Dead. Do you remember? I can't remember which season it was, but after we got the season in The Walking Dead where you're following the governor and everything, and you get, I believe, a one-off, or I believe it's one episode, maybe two. No, it's just one, where you're following the governor for like a single episode, and he's in a different town, and he's kind of, you know, shown in a better light in this town, and to actually be doing a good thing and yet still being a bad man. Now, if we had more time with Harold as a character, and if we got to see, the bits of the journey where he is trying to be the hero of his own narrative, because he saw this as his moment and he saw this as sort of a coming of age for himself, even though it wasn't. If we got to see that journey of him at least attempting to do good things, or at the very least, like a good side of Harold to some degree, that there is good there, that this is still a very bad person, but he's capable of better, and he's maybe being pulled towards better to some degree. If we flesh that out, or we would have got to maybe that note would have meant more. And that also would have given us more moments with our other main leads. So we would have gotten more Franny and more Stu out of that.
This version of Harold, so the original version of Harold, you felt the manipulation from Flag and Nadine. This version, I felt the opposite. I felt Harold was well in charge of his destiny, and he was making the conscious decisions to do what he was doing. Therefore, the only time that he was like, "Oh, my bad," was after he's about to die. And I don't know. I think you did. I wouldn't have killed him there. Honestly, I would have changed that. I would have
same.
Die later.
Yeah, they're already taking some freedom with the property, and they're already changing some things up. Why not change that? Why not make it Randall that kills him, or make it all the way to Vegas, or where he's picking up Nadine, and then Randall is he isn't the chosen one. You aren't what we wanted you to be, and then he takes him out, as opposed to what happened being kind of, that wasn't a freak accident, but the way it transpired once again to me made me feel less when it happened to the character. Just like when Nick was blown up, we didn't have enough time with Nick. We had that one episode.
Nick who?
That episode was great, but then after that, you didn't have him building any relationships with anybody. So once again, I didn't care. So I didn't care when he died. I didn't really care when Mother Abigail died. She was in it for a total of 35 minutes between the first 7 episodes. So all these characters that you're supposed to feel a connection with, I've felt zero. And like you said, with Harold, he was they made it seem as though he was not being manipulated. He was just an evil, shitty person. So like you said, when they read this and Larry's like, you know what? I'm going to give him my code. I'm going to cover. Why? From a 1-page little summary that he was like, you know what? I really wanted to be this, but you weren't. You can't say what you want to be if you're a piece of shit. Like, I don't want to be a piece of shit, but I am.
Yeah, Larry should have been like,
use your behavior.
You blew Nick up. You don't get my jacket to cover your face, and it might be cold out there. That was when you're Larry. I mean Spencer. I thought that too. When he took his jacket off, I was like, "This is not the time to be sacrificing jackets."
Or clothing, yeah. They're hiking from Colorado to Vegas. They got to go through the Rockies, and he's just like, you know what? I'm going to give him my jacket. Bullshit.
Well, yeah, there's that, and then there's the whole situation with Nadine, who he still seemed very attached to, and and given his part in helping pull Nadine in this direction, you think Larry would have a little less empathy for him. Like now, if we had a little more time, or if we had seen like to some degree Larry seeing the human side of him and actually caring about that, it would have made more sense. But as far as we saw, they communicated once, maybe twice. And, it's like, hey, man, I followed your signs to get here. Thanks for that. And that was the end of it, and so, we keep coming back to this place, but, this seems to be the truest issue with the show, that what the show primarily needs is to provide more time to build these characters, to build these relationships. Because, outside of that, the writing's good. And with a little more direction, well, with the exception of Ezra Miller's character.
I disagree with that, though, only because when we watch 30 Coins, which if you guys aren't watching that review, or if you aren't watching the show, tune in. It's on HBO Max. It's amazing. But with one of the characters in that show, you feel connected after like a half an episode. They do a great job. Just one little line of dialogue gives you enough backstory to tie them into the confines of the rest of it. And you get that connection to that character. They've gone 7 hours now. And yes, there's a lot of characters, but what they should have done, I think, Larry, if you're going to, try to flesh out a couple characters, pick a couple of them and spend a little bit more time on them, as opposed to spending no time on, 40 characters. Because the way they did it, I don't care about any of these characters. And if they would have just focused on just Stu or just Harold or just Nadine as their primary focus, and maybe have like 3 or 4 co-leads type, I think we would have been more attached to some of these characters. Whereas now I really don't care.
Well, I was going to disagree with you, but then I mentally contradicted myself, because I was going to bring up Game of Thrones as an example, because this show is more of a slow burn. But then I realized with Game of Thrones that within the first few minutes of meeting most of the characters that they have, and that show has way more characters that, are leads or play a more significant role, you have an opinion about who they are, how you feel about them.
Podrick.
Yeah, absolutely. Podrick played a very small role, and so he still had this attachment. But, even if they can't write on that level, I feel like if they had taken more time, or if they had, just built things up instead of going, all right, here's Stu, you're introduced to Stu, now here's Franny, and here's this other person, here's Larry, here's character B in Colorado, here's character A in Las Vegas. And this show was, I think, an opportunity to sort of flesh out some of these characters a little bit more, and they didn't take that opportunity.
Well, I think too, if they would have, so instead of adding more characters, make those sub characters affect the main 4 characters that you're trying to establish. When Randall Flagg, and I don't even remember his name, the dude in the leather jacket whose face he ripped apart or whatever.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Tommy Billy or Billy John or whatever his name was.
2 first names, whatever his name is.
Like Timothy Joseph, I don't know. But you have that character, you have zero attachment to it, and it shows that he was, physically imposing, and he was very strong and able to, but it didn't really affect my opinion of Randall Flagg at all, as well as didn't develop the other characters. So I think that if they're going to spend all these time on these sub characters, make them affect one of the main characters and add some importance to them. Like you said with Podrick. Podrick was not a main character, but he had such an effect on Tyrion that you felt a connection to him. And that to me is a great show analogy of how to, well, with the exception of the last season, which went off the rails, but that was just rushed. I don't think that it was bad storytelling. I think it was just super hurried. But it's a great way to flesh out characters and make you connect with them. And this show hasn't done that.
Well, this is a weird statement I'm going to make, but I think the problem is I never felt like, especially the core characters, were in the same struggle. And I know that's weird. It's the way they told the story because we all knew where they ended up. Um, I don't know, and it's the way they played certain roles. Like even this episode, there was no outside of Franny, nobody was sad about anything. And
Yeah.
that was for whatever reason that bothered me. Like I said, I don't know. I'm just not feel. I don't feel the weight of what I should be feeling, because you have all these characters. Okay, Mother Abigail, their prophet is dead. Nick blew up. Who they supposedly had bonded with, and was someone that was special to them, part of the crew, who was the voice of Mother Abigail. And yet they just was like, it was like no big deal. And so because they're acting that way, me as the audience, I don't feel that there's anything significant. Even when Stu breaks his leg, the group's a little sad about it, and then they spend a little time, but even that really didn't feel that. It didn't have the weight that it should have.
Right.
And Bobby Terry was the name.
Bobby Terry. I just kept thinking Steve right. Dave for some reason.
You're welcome. Oh, go ahead, Larry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, absolutely, you're right. There's no like emoting about it, like it's a big thing, and I guess they didn't feel the need to emote about these deaths because they're like, well, it seems like even they understand that they barely spent any time with these characters, so that's a hard sell to the audience. But if that's the case, that's a problem because this is your main cast. I hate to compare it to The Walking Dead again, but The Walking Dead also had the same issue. Oh no, and it's Walking Dead spoilers if you haven't seen that already. And next one is like, oh no, T-Bone's dead. Well, moving on. He was one of our main cast members for the last, God, I don't know how many seasons, and this character is dead now. And The Walking Dead did that with a number of seasons, and that's what pulled me away from that show, other than other questionable writing in the show. But
I think that you brought it up, Brian, when you said they didn't show very much emotion. They're getting ready to go on this several 100-mile hiking journey, and I didn't feel like it was going to be hard. Like it should have been
That's what I was trying to relay. Yeah, I don't feel any weight to what they're doing.
And then, like right after that, it shows them talking about they need water, and then within the next frame, it shows them still walking, and then they're laughing, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so I guess they found water." It's
right.
There's a hero.
It's so casual. It's like if we were going on a stroll downtown, It's like they just came across a Circle K or something. It's
yes.
There absolutely. You're both absolutely right. And there was very little impact to that. And I thought we'd see them thirsty. We'd see them struggle. We'd perhaps see them wander across, some of the less benevolent survivors and whatnot. We didn't get any of that. I thought maybe we'd get a twist with, like you were implying, Brian. Maybe Harold survived it, pulled himself off that branch, and he's bitter and he's dying, but he's got a gun, and they're coming across a Harold that's shooting at them and still bitter.
That would have been great. Yeah, I would have been into that. Could you imagine them? Let's write this real quick. Harold survived. That happens. They stop him. They patch him up, and they take him with them to New Vegas, and he gets brought there. And now you have this whole other element. Like, to me, Harold's story should not have ended there. The way they told it, the way they specifically told it in this show. It did to me. It fell flat, and the fact that I said this last week. I was afraid they were going to do it because I knew that's how it ended. And the fact that they did it, like that takes all the air out of the show. Like next week, I pretty much now I can tell you. I'm not going to spoil it for the audience, but I know exactly how it's going to end, and I don't give a shit. I really don't. The only question mark is Nadine, because originally Nadine. The final shot of Nadine, they've changed some things. I'll just say that much. So I'm a little curious to what role she'll play going forward. But I think before we started recording, Larry, you said it's probably just so that her end will connect with Larry in some capacity.
Right. It's to mess with his character for one. Because I mean, I think it's clear that at least at this point in the series, and it should have been made clearer, honestly, but that would have taken more time and effort. That to Randall Flagg, even if he's recruiting somebody, those people are just pawns. They're disposable. I mean, look at all the things he said to Harold and everyone else, and I'm just gonna call him Steve Dave because I can't remember his name again. Like he probably same promises to him. Like those promises that Randall Flagg makes means nothing. So likely Nadine is around. Nadine is given this position just to twist the knife when Larry arrives. That's my thought on that. And yeah, not a bad performance as Randall Flagg either. I'll point that out. It's just the character needed more time, and to be given more time, to be given more depth, and I mean, because if you ask anyone who's seen this show so far up to this point, we've gotten to Vegas and everything, and we've gotten to the point where the main characters are going to Vegas. Yeah, if you ask anyone who's never read the previous book and never seen the previous show, like, well, what's Randall Flagg? What's his deal? Like, oh, he's I don't know, like an evil wizard who floats and runs Vegas. That's the extent you got of it. You don't really have much of the character.
Speaking of, this bothered me a lot, and I wasn't even really going to bring it up because it just doesn't matter, but his true form, they showed.
Yeah.
I hated it. I despise it. Now, look, the original one is a little on the nose as far as the devil imagery, but they could have done something better than this. It looked horrible.
Yeah, it did. It looked, he just looked like a corpse. That's all. You didn't get a feeling of, this man is evil personified. And
I just thought of every other post-apocalyptic show. Like, they should have made him stand out a little bit differently as opposed to he just looked like a zombie.
Yeah, I agree with that because that's all he looked like he was a zombie, and it's like, okay, so he looks a little undead, so maybe he's an undead floating wizard. For all you don't get, oh, he's a devil personified, or he's some great evil that has to be overcome.
Have either of you watched Lucifer at all? Show Lucifer?
I've seen clips, like highlight clips of it, but not the actual show. I've seen its true form. That's what it is.
I've never seen it. Apparently, Coop has opinions.
Hey, Coop,
No.
you like Lucifer?
One of the kids just came home, so they opened the door and they lost their shit. All right, well, all right, they're done now. Oh, kind of. But they my thing is when you look at Lucifer in the show, he looks like what you would think a different version of the devil is. Like, it's not poorly done. It's actually really well done. And so when you look at Jesus, but when you look at Jesus the devil, that's funny. But they the way that they show him, you feel that he is a personification of something that evil or tormented. Whereas this, it looked like we said every other apocalyptic show, and he looked like the undead. He didn't look like evil.
Yeah, and I think what you get from a lot of you don't get undead ghoul from Randall Flagg. I think in a lot of his depictions in the books or in any of Stephen King's comics that adapt these books, you kind of get sort of a demonic vibe, or the idea, or he looks very much just like a human, but never really undead. You don't get the idea that he's undead. But you start to wonder, like, how can a man be this evil?
Yeah, I hated it.
It seemed lazy. It seemed very lazy.
It did, and Spencer bringing up
because you want
the Lucifer. They take more effort whenever he's shown it. He's only done it a few times, but when he shows his true form, even the effects look better on Lucifer, and that's like this network show. And so, I don't know what the hell. What artistic direction I guess they went with. I didn't care for it at all. I also, there was a scene where, so when Stu is at the bottom of the canyon and his legs jacked up and they're gonna leave him, he's given the pills by Glenn and he's clearly told, "Hey, if you take 3 or 4, you won't wake up." Wink, wink.
Yeah.
A way out. And it was one of those. It annoyed me because it was clearly trying to do a parallel between him and Harold. And I'm like, look, guys, you dropped the ball on who's the lead character and the dynamic between these two characters. It doesn't work. So this scene annoyed me because I'm like, okay, I get what you're trying to do here, but at this point, you're just reminding me of how much you botched Harold's ending. So that's all it did for me.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said wink, wink, because it felt that tongue in cheek. There was that little emotion in there that he might as well have done a wink, wink. They weren't. They didn't seem to care as much as much as they should. That, oh no, we're gonna have to leave Stu behind to die. That should have been a big moment, but it didn't feel like there was much emotion behind it.
Yeah, spoilers, audience. Stu's not going to die. There you go. Oops.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that was evident when the dog came back and everything, and we panned back to him, So, I mean, if you didn't pick it up from that,
yeah,
yeah. Like, even though Franny kind of gave him, what's usually a death trope. Hey, come back to your wife and your pregnant wife, ask for you to come back to your family. That usually does spell your death in a lot of media, but
she also gave out a little bit of foreshadowing, laying out the time of birth.
Yeah,
and exactly when it would be, and then I'm sitting there like, all right.
Yeah, and your thought immediately is like, oh, they'll make it there, and he'll drive back in a car or something just in time for the birth.
Well, and say he does find a car, say he does get out of that ravine. My thing is they haven't really showed how long they've been walking. They didn't really show how far they were. So my point of context, when you said she said what, 2 months or something, and then she was supposed to give birth. If they had to walk from, let me see. I'm gonna see. Hold on. You guys can go ahead and talk. I'm gonna see how far it is.
Well, yeah. I want to question that too, because if she said that, it had to be last episode, because I listened back and they said it would take them till February. They never said how many months that would be. They just said till February, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what month is it in the show right now? You're not really giving me any context. Is that a day walk? Is it a few weeks? Is it gonna take you the whole month to get there?
Now just look up.
It is 760 miles from Boulder to
Vegas,
and that doesn't include hiking through the fucking Rockies.
And you gotta. They're walking. They have no transportation. Yeah, pure walking.
So if it was flat, you could probably walk. It would be hard and you'd be tired, but 30 miles a day. However, you got terrain. You got a shit ton of basically hiking uphill. Hiking downhill is hard as shit too. So now you have uphill, downhill traverse, all these things, and they're supposed to go that far. So what happens if they made it halfway? He's got one leg now. So he's gonna hobble around till he finds a car and then make it back? It's just hard for me to piece it together for that to be important when the timeline they've given is super odd and vague.
Well, yeah, and it all feels like, because it was so short, it feels like it all happened in 1, maybe 2 days, that they've been walking for maybe a day or something, and they are where they are now, and it's pretty. It takes a lot of the drama out of it. It's like, oh, you're gonna have to go on foot, and you're gonna have to leave everything behind. It's like, well, it didn't feel like there was a sacrifice there. It seems like a leisurely stroll. Yeah.
They should have focused on wounds. You're going to get sores on your feet. You're going to have issues like that. Just something as simple as that's going to pop up constantly, and it's going to slow you down. There's going to be struggle in a journey like that. And you're right. They had a nice little music playing, and they were just sort of going, and we got zero struggle in the journey outside of Stu's injury.
Well, yeah, and it's the sort of thing, they glossed over that with which is kind of looking over and going, "Hey Ray, can you find food and water and stuff?" And she said, "Yeah," and that
was stupid. That annoyed me too. I didn't want to that whole scene.
Right?
Yeah.
But them just
like,
kind of,
of course I can.
You know, like, like, and now it's addressed to the audience, and we don't have to see any of this.
That's sort of how they did it. they basically, yeah.
Like we talked about it, so now there's no need for a visual.
Yeah.
Which can be true, but the way they've shot everything else, it's definitely not true in this.
Like, and we haven't seen. We never saw. I can't remember his name. You know, dude that they sent to infiltrate Vegas in the first place. You know, we haven't seen Tom this episode.
No, which we should have. He, based on the original, he will be back next week. You'll. I don't want to say it if you don't remember, but he's important. He's still actually very important.
He's the one that gets in a fist fight with Trash Can Man and arm wrestle over the nuclear.
I'll just say him and Stu are friends, and I'll leave it at that. So yeah. I don't think I have anything else to say. Let me see here. Yeah, no, I don't care about that.
I still really hate the depiction of Randall Flagg's number 2. I feel like
Lloyd.
Yeah, Lloyd, like they decided, you know, it's like he should be like Riff Raff, but dumber.
Well, and it's funny you said he sort of changed his sort of style, not his look, but like the way you're right, the way he was talking and acting, he sort of changed it up a little bit this episode. And I don't know, man, that character's all over the place, and I don't like it.
It's awful.
It is pretty bad. Yeah, that's other than Trash Can Man, Lloyd.
How dare you shame Riff Raff? Lloyd wishes he'd be as cool as Riff Raff.
Like, unfortunately, you're right.
$1 million mullet, man. He should have had a mullet. That would have done it. That would have been better.
Like, you're saying if they're going to go for that level of trash,
hell yeah,
stupid, they should go all out.
Damn right.
Yeah, why not? At least make it believable.
Right.
Anything else regarding the Stand episode 7?
Nope. Nothing.
The walk.
Yeah, the short skip, hop and a jump wasn't a walk. They didn't go anywhere.
Watching these episodes has felt like a long walk that's gone on for too long.
It's almost over.
It felt like a walk from Boulder, Colorado to Vegas.
We'll definitely be reviewing the last 2. So if you're still listening, I know we get a downvote every single week. So one of you clearly hates our opinion, which is fine, whatever. But yeah, we get one downvote every single video. I'm like, damn, somebody loves this show.
We're reviewing it because, you know, a lot of the shows we do, we enjoy talking about. This one, we just enjoy ragging on. So
we're in too deep. We honestly, yeah, because we're just in too deep. You know, we're not gonna stop at this point. Because it wasn't horrible up until maybe. I didn't start really getting pissed until around 4 or 5. And at that point, I was like, well, shit, we're halfway. So might as well finish. All right. See y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye.